I'm a great believer in living in the moment, in savouring the now, in being here, rather than living in the past or way in the future. I'm a great believer in ruthlessly eliminating rush and hurry. So one of the things I often say to myself and to other people is that there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time. This can backfire when it's time for school. And my suggestion that there's a sense of urgency, that it might be time to find a mask, to pack a bag, to get some shoes on, is met with the words, "But Dad, there's plenty of time." Try telling that to the teachers. Part of the joy of being human is also to enjoy anticipation, to enjoy looking forward to things. And it's hard at this time of year to think of any events coming up in the next few weeks that people might be looking forward to. Imagine there was some day or some, holiday coming up that people could look forward to. The phrase there would not be "there's plenty of time." The phrase people would be saying would be "I can't wait. I can't wait." In the chaos, in the context of a global pandemic, it is difficult to find sometimes things to look forward to. The phrase "I can't wait" then takes on a different meaning if the things we're desperate for, the things we can't wait for, are an end to a lockdown, an end to the pressure, an end to the chaos. We can't wait for a hope, a vaccine to arrive and to actually make a difference. How long is the question? How long can we wait? We're reading together a letter called The Revelation. For a lot of people, it can seem a bit bonkers. I mean, we're at the start of chapter 10 today. And here you might dive in and immediately see angels and robes and clouds and think, what is going on here? It's a riot of images. And that's actually the flavour of the whole letter. When we're presented with this, especially when we dive right in, say to chapter 10, you might be tempted, like me, to focus on certain words. The first time I would have read something like this, the words that would have jumped out to me would have been words like angel and heaven and robes. And immediately I'd have had a set of pictures in my head, figures in white robes that I've seen from paintings or movies, with wings and shining lights above their heads. I'd think of them on clouds. I might actually picture, because of all the paintings and the movies and other kinds of images I've seen, chubby little children angels. Again, from paintings and wearing sparkly clothes. Or maybe I'd always imagined there'd be sort of tinsel covered coat hangers bent around their heads, like in all the nursery plays and school plays. Or maybe like the kind of little dolls that sometimes end up on the top of people's Christmas trees. But as I've wrestled, as I've worked my way through this collection of books that we call the Bible and asked questions about what's going on with the people, particularly the Jewish people at the centre of the story, the first people who collected, who wrote down and who heard these words. And now another set of words jump out to me, as would have to them. This letter was written in the first century. It was written to groups of followers of a movement based around a Jewish teacher called Jesus of Nazareth, who had been killed around about 60 years before this letter was written to be read out loud. To these groups who were meeting in each other's homes in the shadow, in the context of the Roman Empire of the time. As they heard these words read out loud, they would have had other images come into their heads, and they would have focused on completely different words. No tinsel coat hangers for them. An angel was a messenger from God. And in their stories, in their experiences, angels were not chubby little children. They were either ordinary people, just like themselves, who arrived at certain times to pass on messages or to do things, or they were terrifying creatures that usually were there to do something dark and terrible to any opposition to what God was doing. The other words that would jump out at the start of chapter 10, if I was a first century Jew in the face of the Roman Empire, would be the words like cloud and rainbow and face like sun and pillars of fire, because I would have grown up with stories about my people, about the experiences of my God and the people I had grown up with, that would have been shaped by feasts and festivals that would remind me that roots of my story were a people who were slaves in a place called Egypt, and who cried out in their slavery and were rescued by their God, the Creator God, the God who made promises to my people. And in especially the time of a man called Noah, put a rainbow in the sky as a sign that God would not give up on his project. And as my ancestors wandered in the desert following a man called Moses, then our God would appear in a cloud and as pillars of fire. And Moses, our great hero, would talk to God, and then his face would shine like the sun afterwards. So when I read the words of a man called John, who's had a set of visions on an island and is now writing a letter to let me hear about it, and I hear him talking about an angel and clouds and rainbows and faces like sun and pillars of fire, I just know these are symbols of my God and my story. And this is the God who's at work, the God who hears the cry, the God of Noah, the God of Israel, the God of Moses. And I hear that the angel is holding a scroll, or part of a scroll, or sometimes it's called a little scroll in here. And the scroll is open. Now, whether it's a little scroll or a book, it's the same thing that seems to be being talked about all the way through here, or sometimes just parts of it. This scroll seems to represent what my God is doing, the project. And that project is to put things back together, to sort out the mess his creation has got in, because of, well, so far in these stories, in these visions, it's been because of a lion-lamb figure, which seems to obviously represent Jesus of Nazareth. And so now this mighty angel figure in chapter 10 has 1 foot on the land and 1 foot on the sea, and he roars like a lion. There's that image again of how John's seen Jesus already in this, the living Jesus. And his voice is the voice of 7 thunders. These are all images that fire off memories in my first century imagination. One of them would actually not be from my Jewish culture, but from the legends of the time, because I would know about the great statue, or actually the ruins that are left of the great statue Colossus of Rhodes. That famous colossal statue that would have spanned the entrance to the harbour, 1 foot on the land, 1 foot on the sea. And so in here, this angel standing on the land and the sea simply means he covers everything. We've seen the lion representing Jesus. We've seen thunder in the stories of the Jewish people as their God speaks to him. We've seen 7 is the number of completeness. So what about the 7 thunders that are mentioned here? John talks about the 7 thunders, and then we don't know. We don't know because John's not allowed to write that part down. What on earth is going on? Well, the impression we get as we read through these chapters, as we journey with John through his visions, through his experience, is that none of this is about specific points. What John's trying to do is to capture something that can barely be put into words. He's trying to capture an experience or a set of experiences. He's trying to capture a message from a God who can't fit into little boxes or neat words. And as much as people have loved to try and pore over every detail of this letter and try and work out and put it in order or even find some time frame, that's not what is happening. This is about an overall impression and sense. John's trying to get us to feel emotions. Of course, he can't write it all down. Of course, there are parts like the 7 thunders that are not for us. Not everything about God can be captured or even written down. This is about a flavour, a set of sensations, a set of experiences, something much bigger, and then John passing that on to his listeners. The angel talks about a God they would recognise, the God who created everything, land and sea, heavens and earth, which represents everything in creation. John's listeners know that their God created a world that was good, a creation full of potential. And yet, for the last few chapters, what John's visions have been revealing is a creation that is not the way it was made to be. And yet in the life and death and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, now there's nothing in the way of the scroll unfolding, of God sorting things out. But they, like me, are impatient, stuck in the middle of their pressure, of their weariness, of their suffering. Not feeling at all like there's plenty of time, but saying, we can't wait. We cry out, how long? How long before you sort this out? What John's revealed over the last few chapters is a sense that one of the reasons that God waits is to allow, to hope, to provoke that his creation will turn around. But what this angel seems to be saying in chapter 10 is that there will come a time when there will be no more delay. Now, it's pointless trying to work out when this is. It's pointless trying to put John's experiences in order. It's pointless trying to work out a timeline for this, or even for what this means in history. That's not the point of what is going on. In fact, these stories in other places and in John tell us not to even bother trying to do that. What this message is not about the order that things will happen in, but simply that it will happen, and some of it is already happening, and there will come a time when God says, no more delay, no more waiting, no more suffering, no more tears, no more death, no more injustice. Which is a message of hope to the weary, to the burdened, to the broken. But it's also a message of warning to all the forces working against God's project. And so when the angel says that the mystery of God will be accomplished, it's just another way of saying that God will sort things out. That God is the God of creation, but not a God who gives up on his creation, a God of recreation. He's going to put this all back together. And when he says, no more delay, then it will be done. It will be sorted out, just as the plan has been all along in the story of the Jewish people, the story of the prophets, and in the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. What's different, I guess, at this pause in chapter 10 is a sense that there is an urgency. At the start of all these visions, the scroll was sealed and people were crying because it couldn't move forward. Now the scroll lies open. It can move forward. It is moving forward thanks to Jesus of Nazareth. But that is, like this letter, both good news and bad news. Which is why when John eats the scroll in this image and takes in the whole message, it's as sweet as honey. And that's an image that's all over the Jewish stories about God's word and God's plans as being sweet as honey. But the effect for parts of the creation that are working against God's project will be sour, bitter. As much as we cry for justice, no one actually wants anyone or anything to miss out. But that's the potential reality in these visions. And so this pause ends with John being reminded of what he's doing and reminding us of what he's doing in this letter. He's not just writing a letter. He's not just describing his experiences. He's a prophet. A prophet was someone who passed on what God had revealed to them, a message of comfort or challenge. Nothing new, but deep realities uncovered again, and for John, in a new, startling, overwhelming, and provocative way. Comfort in the chaos, and challenge in the complacency. Comfort in the chaos, but also challenge in the complacency. We have time. It is important, like I believe, to be here now, to live now. This is the only time I can live. This is the only time I can make a difference. This is the only place I can make a difference. The only people I can make a difference to and with are next to me right now. But there is, if I listen, an urgency. Because at some point, there can be, in the words in here, no more delay.